As the senior member, I'd like to welcome all to the meeting and for reorganization purposes. But before then, as we saw last week in Boston, we had a couple of firefighters who were valiant, gave their lives. And then also today, there was a police officer who was in the line of duty who was laid to rest. And we certainly pray for their families. And I think we always have to be reminded of our own force, the valiant men and women that we have on the police force, the firefighters, and we always have to pray that they go home every night. So with that, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for the three deceased firefighters and police officers. Okay. Bill, I certainly want to congratulate you on your reelection. It was quite a year. Your leadership during the casino, all the meetings, schedules, and all the insights that you brought to the whole process. Also, your work on the revitalization of the ADC and the establishment of the ID department as it's going forward now. Brian, as always, your work on the Fields project, your work on the liberation and renovation of the Armory, and also all the tremendous work that you've done for the seniors at the Senior Center. Rick, it's been a tremendous year for you as well. I think you went from Double-A to the major leagues in 1 year, and you did it very well. You have, from what people have told me, wonderful rapport with the public, accessible, very helpful, the relationship with the board, you're intelligent, provide excellent information, and I just think that you've handled yourself very well during the past year. And also, Jeannie and Liz, our support staff, second to none. The phone calls they receive on a daily basis, the things that they do for us, and it just makes the entire office run very smoothly, and it's a pleasure to have them when you first come into the Selectmen's office. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the town administrator for nominations.
Yes, thank you, Dino. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to elect a new chairman for the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Administrator, it's my honor and privilege to nominate my colleague, Dino DeBartolomeus, for the position of chairman. Mr. DeBartolomeus is a selfless, dedicated public servant who has given over 30-plus years of his life to the town of Milford, and his sole goal has always been, from what I've seen, is to try to help people. And so with that, I'm pleased to enter his name into nomination for the position of chairman.
Town Administrator, I would also second that motion. I think this is Dino's 12th time, so he's certainly demonstrated that capability. His interest in the community, his commitment to the community is as high as anyone, so I would be happy to second that. Go ahead.
All in favor?
Thanks, Brian.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dean.
Bill, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. If I might, before we go further, I just wanted to echo a comment. Town Administrator Villani, through his first year, was really a trial by fire. And I want to personally thank him for the support that he gave me as chairman. It was trial by fire. There was no book you could go to. You couldn't go to a former administrator. You couldn't go to an existing administrator and get guidance on the process that we went through for the casino as an example. That was new legislation, and the town administrator navigated his way through that, provided guidance to me, interacting with all the various department heads, and I want to personally thank Rick Villani for his support, amongst others. But I want to echo your comments regarding Rick's work in the first year and thank him personally. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for your help and assistance. I appreciate it.
Just if you'll give me another moment to just say a few things. Brian and Bill, I want to especially thank you for your support and confidence. It is truly a privilege to serve on this board and a tremendous honor to serve as your chairman over the next year. I will do my very best to represent you and the community with integrity, fairness, and professionalism. I have planned for a very challenging and aggressive agenda for the year. I simply ask for your ideas, collaboration, and participation. We will certainly tackle sensitive and complex issues that will hopefully have a positive outcome for the residents. We are a team, and I will assist you as well in your priorities and projects. We must continue to deliberate and work with the Finance Committee, the financial department heads, the financial analyst, and the administrator on a constant basis in order to wisely monitor the town's financial stability, excellent rating, and overall health. Our community is in an envious position. However, we need to be vigilant, cautious, and disciplined to sustain this sound fiscal condition. We cannot be too cavalier in our attitude. No one knows what the economy will be in 8 or 10 years. We cannot always depend on increases with local aid, even though our state rep and state senator have done a superb job. Along with the budget and maintaining our fiscal health, there are other major priorities for the coming year, to mention a few. Maintain the dual tax rate. Continue our commitment of no debt exclusions and Proposition 2.5 overrides. Support and strengthen our fine school system for the education of our children. Finally, commence the Milford Pond project later this year. Protect and preserve our valuable land for open space in perpetuity. The environment and aquifers always need our absolute attention. Strategize and plan with the town planner, town engineer, IDC, and the Chamber of Commerce in attracting viable and clean industry to our community for much-needed jobs and for the enhancement of the tax base. Improve the acoustics in Upper Town Hall for the town meeting members. Augment, if possible, and support the men and women of our public safety departments. Try to expand tax relief to our eligible senior citizens on the tax bills. There are hundreds of extremely gifted and talented town hall employees, appointed elected official, town meeting members, and committee volunteers in this community. Milford is a wonderful and proud and decent community. We need to govern in a practical manner with accountability and with the sensitivity to the taxpayer. The future holds great promise and prosperity for all. And with that, we'll get to the agenda, and thank you again very much for your vote of confidence in me as chairman. Is there anyone, citizen participation, is there anyone who wants to say something that's not on the agenda? Okay, we'll go right to the first hearing, which is Royal Buddha. Let me just read the notice that was sent out. Please take notice that the Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing pursuant to General Law, Chapter 138, Section 64, and other applicable law at 7 p.m. in Room 3, Town Hall, 52 Main Street, on April 7th, at which hearing the Board of Selectmen will consider whether or not to modify or suspend or revoke the license issued for your establishment pursuant to said Chapter 138. In addition, pursuant to General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12. The Board will also consider whether or not there's a public need for a decrease in the hours of operation permitted to your establishment. The reason for the contemplated action is because of the events of March 7, 2014, which began at or about 2:12 a.m. when the Milford Police Department received a call that there was a fight at your establishment. The police reports detailing what happened during the course of this incident, together with the statements from witnesses in relation to what transpired, are attached hereto. The events and activity described therein indicate a failure on your part to manage the establishment consistent with the rules applicable to licensed alcoholic beverages establishments in Milford, in a particular Section 101A and Section 101E. In addition, your management of the establishment, including remaining open for customers after 2 a.m. when the hours under your license ended at 1 a.m., and all other activity implicates Section 105A1 of those same regulations. In addition, all of the activities described would indicate violation of the rules and regulations of the Massachusetts Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission and in particular 204 CMR 2.052, which states, "No license for the sale of alcoholic beverages shall permit any disorder, disturbance, or illegality of any kind to take place in or on the licensed premises. The licensee shall be responsible, therefore, present or not." All the various incidents and activities described in the above referenced police reports are indicative of significant failure of management of the licensed premises. And you have a right to have counsel at the hearing, and this was signed by Town Administrator Attorney Valani. Some of you have probably, we don't do these every week, we don't like doing these things, but when something happens, we have to schedule the meeting. If there are any questions, everything has to go through the chair. I'd appreciate, people not applauding or yelling or whatever the case may be. It's, the parameters will be that I'll go to town council, and he'll present information to us, and that after that, we'll go to Attorney Heller for the presentation on behalf of the Royal Buddha. Then the chief may have comments that he would like to offer to the board, and then the board members will have questions, and we'll go from there, okay? So it's got to be orderly, controlled, and we'll try to get through this thing in the best way possible, and then at the end of the meeting, the board may render a decision on the evidence that was heard during this meeting and testimony. So with that, I'll turn it over to Town Council Gerald Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe Brian, if I can grab your microphone.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like for me and Mr. Eng to take the front row.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll be brief, because you have before you, I think, virtually everything you need, if not everything that you need. As you know, this event took place in the early morning hours of March 7th, Friday, March 7th, actually the beginning of Thursday hours. So the hours of operation for that evening for alcohol, closing was supposed to be 1 a.m. on Friday for the hours that began on Thursday. And you have, I think, in front of you a copy, each of you have a copy, I believe, of the all alcoholic beverage license. And you've got a copy also of the common victuals license, very important to this matter, which also has the 1 o'clock hour. So in both cases, service was supposed to cease not later than 1 a.m. on that Friday morning. But as you know from the reports, that was not the case. The call came into the police department, as you also have from the reports, of the fracas or the fight that took place at the establishment at 2:12 a.m., almost an hour and a quarter after what should have been closing. And when you look through the reports that are attached to the notice, and you have the report from Officer Dennis, the investigating officer, and you have statements from Mr. Ng and from other witnesses also, you'll see a constant reference to their customers on the premises all waiting for food is the phrase that's utilized. There's nothing in the reports that indicate that alcohol is being served, no question about that. But this is an hour and 15 minutes after closing. People are, quote, waiting for food, end of quote. Obviously, orders are still being taken, orders are being placed, food is being cooked, and food is being served, whether it's on the premises or takeout, in clear violation of both licenses. The chief would tell you, and I think he's expressed to you, that there's a practice that we have with any establishment. Last call, of course, is whatever the closing hours is, 1 o'clock in this case. No more service of alcohol after that, and customers have to be cleared from the premises within a reasonable time, which is always expected to be no longer than a half hour. So you have a 1 o'clock closing, people that are still there to finish a drink or to finish a meal, if that's the case. They're all supposed to be cleared out, except necessary employees, by 1:30. But again, here at 2:12, we still have people, quote, waiting for food, end of quote. And as you know from the reports, what happened is a fight took place. However it began isn't so crucial. The most important thing is that it happened. And it happened, as I think you have to include, as a direct result of the violation of the hours in this situation. If you look through the reports, there were some 4 civilians that you can identify that were present in addition to the manager, in addition to employees at the time. And as you also know from the reports, it was a very serious brawl. There were personal injuries involved, there was property damage, and people indicate that they felt their lives were threatened, and it ended up being a very violent, multi-person brawl. There are criminal charges still pending on that, unrelated to this, but those will be dealt with in the normal system. Again, I don't have any witnesses for you because I don't think any are needed in this case. You have in front of you, again, the statements. I would only highlight a few things for you, in particular in the, if I can find it here, the report of Officer Dennis. Again, it's very clear in terms of the timing, in terms of the call coming in at 2:12 a.m. And again, as you see in the third paragraph, he's taken down among the statements that Ing, which is Mr. Brian Ing, I believe is his name, stated that he had served last call and that there were a couple of people waiting for food. Now, again, this is more than an hour and 15 minutes after what should have been the last call, or at least the last service. And you'll see there's a description of the officer as to what happened. There's no need to go through that in any great detail, but I would point out to you a few paragraphs, or in particular the fourth to the last paragraph on that second page, where Officer Dennis indicates that Ing stated in a voluntary statement report that at this time he feared for his life and the safety of the employees and customers. Dennis goes on to say that Ing stated that he went to the office and grabbed his personal defense weapon, which is legal and he has a license to carry. And then Ing stated that he then called 911. Ing stated that when he returned to the lobby, Fraga was still fighting with the staff. Ing stated that the individual saw that he had a phone in his hand and punched him in the eye and stated, "I'm going to F you up." At this time, Ing stated that he told the individual that, "I've got a gun, stop." Then Ing stated to the officer that at that point in time, the individual actually grabbed him by the neck, and the fight continued on from there. You'll also have attached reports from other individuals. And in this regard, I would actually call your attention to the statement in particular of, I believe it's Mr. K-I-O-V-E-R, I'm not sure the exact spelling, Kevin Kivior, which is one of the statements which you have, which indicates in his opening statement that he's giving this voluntarily to the police department, of course, and these are presumably in his own words, and it's signed by him. I had been sitting at the Royal Buddha on March 7th, 2014 at approximately 1:30 to 2 a.m. You'll see later that he had a friendly relationship with one of the employees. But particularly telling is when you look on the second page after he's described the beginnings of the fight. And he indicates that in the course of the fight, meaning he began slipping in ice and glass when Steve went after Ing, the owner. When the fight had started, Ben had shown and warned Steve and the other gentleman that he had his fully licensed handgun. That's when Steve went irate. I ran into the lobby and witnessed 3 men rolling around with a gun. Ben had freed himself of the 2 men. I told him to get away from them before the individual went after Ben again. I separated him again. This time he tried a chokehold, and he goes on to describe how he got out of that. So again, with these reports in full indicate a very bad situation, one that I think unequivocally is precipitated by the fact of the violation of the license conditions of staying open on those hours. Again, in my view, appallingly, a gun was brought into a barroom brawl totally unnecessarily and putting the public at risk. But again, I think you've got a very serious violation here on a number of levels, and I think it is severe action by your board is certainly warranted. The notice that was read by the chairman does indicate the provisions of your regulations that are violated, and also that very important rule of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, which you've invoked in other serious similar situations, that no licensee for the sale of alcoholic beverages shall permit any disorder, disturbance, or illegality of any kind to take place in or on the licensed premises. The licensee shall be responsible, therefore, whether present or not. This is a regulation that's taken very seriously by the ABCC and by the courts, and it creates a virtual absolute responsibility on the part of the operators to prevent this kind of activity. You sat through hearings when managers have told you, "Oh, I didn't know what was going to happen. How could I control it? What could I do?" Well, it's their absolute responsibility to do that. This one, you have a little bit more than you often do in these cases, where you've got a clear violation that led to it. If the operation had been handled correctly and the custom had been cleared out by 1:30, obviously, none of this would have taken place. With that, I don't think I can really add anything to it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. but I think your board should consider it and consider some significant discipline in this regard.
Before we go to Attorney Allen, Brian, any questions for Jerry?
Not right now.
Bill?
No, I was just wondering, as a matter of practice, would we hear from the chief before we hear the testimony from the license holder?
Chief, anything to add?
I think council provided a really, sound summation to what took place there, as well as pointing out and highlighting some of the issues and concerns as you read through the reports themselves.
My only question, Chief, was in relation, town council specifically brought out the issue of the gun. It's my understanding that you've subsequently met with the district attorney or someone from the district attorney's office and have a statement related to that.
The gun, he's properly licensed to have the firearm for his personal protection. He has the legal right to protect others, whether it be customers or employees. The situation as it was unfolding fairly quickly, so, he made a judgment. At the point where he has the gun, he's already been struck with a glass that was thrown at him. People have been throwing stools about the premises, attempting to hit the bartender, his employee. So he's properly licensed to protect himself and others. He had been choked, punched. At that point, he did call 911 at that point, and as I said, I don't believe he acted outside of the criminal law as it relates to the firearm. He's still properly licensed and still owns the weapon.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Chief.
Chief.
Okay, at this time, we'll go to Attorney Warren Haller. Warren?
Yes, congratulations, Mr. Chairman, on
Thank you.
your 12th go-round, and good evening, gentlemen. Obviously, my client, I wanted to introduce a few people to you. I'm going to make some preliminary comments and give you some historical perspective. And then, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I have a series of photographs that I intend to place on the TAC board, which I think in the course of our response to the factual situation outlined by Attorney Moody, but as you all have been on this board for a long time, and there's black and there's white, and then there's lots of shades of gray in between. And I suggest to this board that you keep your minds open, because there was a little more to the situation. It was not as blatant a violation as Mr. Moody has suggested. There is no question, just so the board knows at the outset, my client accepts responsibility for the fact that his doors were open and there were civilians in the premises after 1 o'clock and after the usual half hour to get people to disperse. So it wasn't an hour and 15 minutes per se, but it was close to 45 minutes. But we are going to explain to you what the circumstances were. Mr. Eng accepts responsibility for a misjudgment on his part, but I think you'll see that there are mitigating circumstances, and when I'm through with the presentation, I'm going to ask the board to consider some of those mitigating circumstances. And I'm going to then present you with some items that my client has already implemented to see that nothing like this would ever happen again. So, prior to getting into the actual factual response, what I wanted to do was just share a little bit of history. The Royal Buddha first received an all-alcoholic and common victualler license in 1985. They've held the license continuously for 29 years. The manager of the restaurant from the day it opened until his death in July of 2012 was Tong Yao, everybody knew him as Tony Eng. Ben Eng is the oldest son of 3 sons of Tony Eng and Tony's wife, Cheryl Eng, who is seated in the second row. Mrs. Eng has worked in the restaurant since it opened. Her mother, Helen Moy, was one of the original officers along with Tony Eng. Helen Moy unfortunately passed away in, I believe it was February of 2010.
December.
November?
December.
All right, December 2010. Edwin Moy, who is Cheryl Eng's brother, Tony Eng's brother-in-law, Ben's uncle, took his mother's spot as a director and as an officer of the corporation. So the point is that for 29 years, this has been a closely held family business. And they have, in my opinion, have run an establishment with very few incidents. I reviewed the history in this case. There was something in 1987, something in 1997, and that's basically been it. As the chief has made his reports to the board over the last several years, yes, there have been incidents at the Royal Buddha, just like there have been incidents at almost every other liquor establishment in the town of Milford. But none of them rose to the level of you folks calling them in for a public hearing. This is the first time since probably 1997 that they've had to answer to the board. An interesting thing that historically, Mr. Chairman, at the time of the liquor license being granted in 1985, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen was a young fellow by the name of Aldo Chakey. His colleagues included John Betcher and a very young, up-and-coming politician by the name of Dino DeBartolomeus. So you actually were on the board, Mr. Chairman, at the time the license was granted. Now, Benjamin Eng, who's here with me, grew up working in the restaurant as a young boy, as did his brothers, as did all the family. Benjamin is a graduate of Brookline High School. He's a graduate of Bentley College. At the time it was still Bentley College, and graduated in 2004. He had majored in marketing, finance, and sales. Ben was recruited to go to Japan after he got out of college to work for a marketing firm. And he's worked in Tokyo as part of a sales team marketing for Virgin Cafe. He works for a company called Virgin Inc. It's a spin-off of Virgin Air, and I think we're all aware of Charles Branson, who is in charge of that company. The reason that Ben was recruited is that he's trilingual. He speaks not only English, but he speaks Japanese, and he speaks 2 dialects of Chinese. As part of his job, he is there to help market the franchise, the Virgin Cafe. It's sort of like our version of, what was it, the Rock?
The Hard Rock Cafe.
The Hard Rock Cafe. Well, over in Asia, instead of Hard Rock Cafe, they have this Virgin Cafe. So Ben has worked as a translator both in Japan, Korea, Thailand, Taiwan, mainland China, and Hong Kong. He's, for a guy 32 years old, he certainly had a vast experience. He's traveled a lot. He worked there from February 2005 to April 2012. And interestingly, in 2008, prior to the Beijing Olympic Games, the Chinese government invited him to advise small business owners in China in how to deal with Western culture before the Summer Games. And he spent 4 or 5 months in China. What I found interesting is that all the restaurants in Beijing, in that area, all use chopsticks. What he advised them was that Westerners prefer forks. And as a result of his advice to them, they ordered 10,000 forks so that they'd have them when the tourists all came for the Olympics. Now, it was never Ben's intent. Ben had hoped to stay there. He really enjoyed being in Tokyo, where he was living. Circumstances dictated that he had to come home. His father, Tony, was diagnosed in February 2012 with bladder cancer. Tony's wife, Cheryl, and the family kept that from Ben for as long as they could. Tony's condition worsened rapidly, and by March of 2012, he was starting to get very weak, and the outlook was not promising. Ben jumped on a plane and arrived, he left on April 3rd, 2012 from Tokyo, came home to Arlington to be with his father and his family. On April 4th, he arrived, 2012, and saw his father, and then went to the Royal Buddha restaurant, which was not being managed at that time because Tony was too ill to do it. And he became the de facto manager of the restaurant. He didn't have training. He wasn't trained to do this other than he knew the business and he had a sense for business. He learned, and as he went, he learned a lot. I would suggest to you that since under his stewardship, since April of 2012, I reviewed the records. I did not see the Royal Buddha's name listed in any letters from the chief to this board. I would suggest to you that he did an exemplary job and a fine job. He brought change to the restaurant. He changed chefs. He improved the quality of the food. He made improvements by getting new furnishings for the, instead of booths, they put in tables, and you're going to see some of the tables. So up until this incident, I would suggest that Ben was doing a remarkable job under very difficult circumstances. Now, that brings us to the events of the early morning of March 7th, 2014. And I'm going to take you on a timeline through the events of that evening, starting at about 12:30, when the last call was given. Before I do that, though, I would like to put these photos up. May I, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman?
sure, Warren.
Okay. With the assistance of Mr. Eng, who has a laser beam, as I present what I'm about to present, he will point to specific spots as to what was happening and where in the restaurant. I think being able to visualize what went on that evening should help the board in your evaluation of what his actions were and in making your decision later tonight. So, March 7th started out and seemed like any other Thursday night as Benjamin Eng worked at the Royal Buddha Restaurant. As is customary, he gave last call for alcohol at 12:30 a.m. At the time, 6 or 7 customers were in the bar area. One of them included a man named Albert Azevedo. All of the others left before or by 1:30. Others at the restaurant at that time were the bartender waitress, Ariana Bentley, and not just a friend or acquaintance, as Mr. Moody, I think, alluded to, but it was her fiancé, Kevin Kevior, who was there to pick her up. At approximately 12:50 a.m., Ben was standing by the tiki hut going over the day's receipts and waiting for the last customers to leave. Albert Azevedo commented to him about the many times that Alfred had watched Ben's father, Tony Eng, do the very same thing that Ben was doing. He told Ben that he often helped Tony close up by sweeping, vacuuming, putting chairs up, stacking glasses, bringing things to the delivery bay, etc. As the conversation went on, and Albert confided to Ben that in the early stages of Tony's terminal cancer, that Tony collapsed in the lobby in front of where the tiki hut is now located. Albert transported Tony to the emergency room, called Tony's wife, Cheryl, who drove from Arlington and waited to help close and lock up the restaurant. Albert continued reminiscing and telling Ben stories about Ben's father that Ben had never heard before. Albert has known the Eng family for quite some time, and although Ben didn't know him as well as others in the family did, the Engs considered Albert part of their extended family. During this walk down memory lane, Ben lost track of time. So, you're asking how did this happen, that things were still going on at 1:30? It was not by design, it was not by anything other than Ben lost track of time because Alfred was telling him things about his father that he had never heard before. Before he realized it, Ben realized it's now 1:30. Ariana was in the bar area sweeping and cleaning, moving glasses, stocking empties, and taking inventory of the alcohol. These are all normal closing procedures. And I think nobody argues the fact that the employees don't have to be out at the same hour as the customers, so they could have stayed even later. All right, now, usually Ben is done with his paperwork before 1:30, and then he locks the front door. I asked him why he didn't just lock the door like at 1 o'clock when the place closed, and he gave me a very candid and honest answer. He said he doesn't lock the front door till everybody's out because of his concerns of what happened at the Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island. The next nearest exit is in the back of the building. Most of the customers wouldn't even know where it is. So he has, in the past, left the door open till the last person other than an employee is out. And that policy is going to change, and that proved to be one of the factors that led to the events that occurred a few minutes later. So now it's 1:30. And at about 1:30 or a little after, Ben heard the chime on the front door. When he looked up, he saw Stephen Fraga, someone he recognized as occasionally patronizing the restaurant. Entering behind him and coming from the opposite direction were 2 regular customers, gentlemen by the name of Tiago Da Silva and Mario Pisani. They had both given statements. Ben was still at the tiki hut when Mr. Fraga approached him. If you don't know who Stephen Fraga is, I'll tell you that he's an imposing figure. He's at least 6'3", and at least 275 pounds. And he's not, it's solid. Mr. Fraga came in, he said he wanted a drink. Ben said, "You can't have a drink. I already gave last call, we're closed, sorry." Mr. Fraga was persistent and got confrontational. His eyes were dilated, and although it was a cold night, he was sweating. Ben sensed that given Mr. Fraga's attitude, that there could be a problem with him. In an effort to calm down Mr. Fraga and to diffuse what he thought might end up as a serious situation, Ben said, "How about I give you some takeout on me, but then you have to go." So basically, he offered to give him some food to see if he could get him to leave. The offer of free takeout worked, and Mr. Fraga calmed down. The other two men, Pisani and De Silva, had also wanted a drink, but they did not complain when Ben told them no. When he offered takeout to Mr. Fraga, they asked for something to eat as well, and Ben told them okay. But he told them, "As soon as I give it to you, you have to leave." Ben went back to the kitchen. Everything had been shut down, so it took about 15 minutes or so for the food to be prepared. There were some cooks who were still there that he would drive back to the city, and they were actually working, prepping for a very large party that was going to take place a few days after this event, and so they were actually working late themselves. So now the timeline. So now about 1:50 or 1:55 a.m. Ben brought out the food from the kitchen. Instead of leaving, Mr. Fraga renewed his request for a drink. He offered to buy a round for everyone there. Ben again told him no, and again told him that he had already served last call. At this time, Mr. De Silva and Pisani were standing over by the fish tank, waiting for their food. Ariana Bentley was in the bar area finishing up her closing duties. Kevin Kevior was with her. Mr. Fraga again became agitated, and Ben and Mr. Azevedo, who is also a friend of Stephen Fraga's, were able to calm him down. Mr. Fraga was persistent, though, and said, "How about a shot?" Ben emphatically said no. No is no. At this time, Mr. De Silva walked over, picked up his takeout, and started toward the door. He made an innocuous statement to the effect, "Let's go, everyone." Mr. Fraga turned around, for some reason called Mr. De Silva and Mr. Pisani fags, and for no reason punched Diego De Silva in the head. Mr. De Silva stumbled backwards toward the front door and ran outside. Now it's about 2 a.m. Mr. Pisani tried to calm Mr. Fraga down, as did Ben and Mr. Azevedo, both of whom had closed in on him and were in front of him. Had closed in and were in front of him. Mr. Fraga began flailing away, throwing short punches. He couldn't give him a roundhouse because they were right in front of him. He grazed Mr. Azevedo in the head or neck area, and he hit Ben on the jaw. Mr. Fraga was yelling that he was going to kill everyone and mess up their, for want of a better word, I use crap. But he was going to mess their crap up. And he looked at Ben and said, "I'm going to kill you." At this point, Ariana Bentley came out from behind the bar area. All the chairs were stacked against the wall. The bar area was dimly lit, glasses were drying on the bar. All of the TVs and jukebox were off. Ariana tried to be a peacemaker. Mr. Fraga pushed her away from him forcefully, causing her to fall backwards onto the floor. Mr. Fraga then grabbed one of the bar chairs and threw it at Ariana. Kevin Kevier, her fiancé, stepped in front of the chair and deflected it away. The chair hit him in the shoulder area. Mr. Fraga then grabbed several glasses and started throwing them at people. They were glasses that were on the bar. One cocktail glass hit Ben in the face and neck, over in this area on his face, and broke and cut him. He was bleeding. Mr. Fraga continued to yell that he was going to kill everyone. Needless to say, Ben was very scared and concerned, not only for his personal safety, but for the safety and well-being of his employees and for the others who were there. It was at about this timeline around 2:05 a.m., that Ben went and unlocked his office and unlocked the storage area where his duly licensed Smith & Wesson handgun was stored. He then proceeded to go behind the tiki hut and you'll see that there's a telephone in that area. So he went behind the tiki hut to use the phone there to call 911 and to keep an eye on Mr. Fraga. It was then about 2:10 a.m. As he got to the phone, he saw that Kevin Kevier and Mr. Fraga were fighting. They were punching and grappling with each other. As Ben was dialing 911, Mr. Fraga made eye contact with him. He charged behind the bar, came around behind the bar, and ran towards Ben, who had just told the dispatcher what was happening. The last words Ben said to the dispatcher were that Mr. Fraga was coming after him. As Mr. Fraga reached where Ben was standing, Ben began to slowly retreat by backing up toward the entrance to the kitchen. Mr. Fraga grabbed the telephone and threw it on the floor. He looked at Ben and said, "I'm going to F you up." Mr. Kevier had given chase, but Ariana was holding him back at that point. At this point, Ben applied the training rules that he had received when he took a gun safety course in May of 2013, taught by Sergeant John Sanchione of the Milford Police Department. Ben assertively said, "Steve, stop. I have a gun." At that point, the gun was in Ben's hand behind his back. His finger was not on the trigger. The safety lock was locked, and the gun was pointed toward the floor, just as he had been taught. Mr. Fraga responded to this command to stop by punching Ben in the face. Slowly backing up some more, Ben again shouted, "Steve, stop. I have a gun." Mr. Fraga punched him in the face again, hitting his left eye. He then grabbed Ben by the neck with one hand and was winding up to punch him again. Before Mr. Fraga could strike him, Ben brought the gun from behind his back to in front of him at eye level. It was still pointed down, his fingers were still off the trigger, and the safety lock was still locked. At no time did he point the gun at Mr. Fraga. Apparently seeing the gun got Mr. Fraga's attention, because he actually let go of Ben's neck. He put his hands up in the air, and he took a step backward. Kevin Kevier and Alfred Azevedo then grabbed Mr. Fraga in an effort to restrain him. Ben saw flashing blue lights outside and ran to meet the police, where he encountered Officer Denise. Needless to say, he was grateful for the prompt response by the police. So that's what happened. It wasn't that Mr. Eng was serving food after hours. In fact, the kitchen had been closed. It was unfortunate that the door had been unlocked, and then on that particular night, at that particular time, Stephen Fraga chose to come inside. And there was something going on with him because he was very belligerent and very hostile. As you heard, in an effort to appease him, and it worked for a while, he offered him free food. In fact, if you read Officer Mastriani's report, when he came to see Ben the next day, Fraga's food was still sitting in the bag on the counter, because Ben had been so shaken up, when he left it right where it sat. And so, what I'm trying to point out is that he wasn't intentionally serving food after hours. He did that in an effort to try to avoid what ultimately occurred anyway. My purpose in going into such detail is to point out that most of his decisions during the early hours of March 7th were reasonable under the circumstances, and rather being indicative of a significant failure to manage the restaurant properly, actually you could find and conclude the opposite. He took reasonable steps to diffuse a potentially explosive situation by offering free food as an appeasement to an obviously aggressive and wound-up man who was on the verge of losing control and eventually did lose control. He used sound judgment when he retrieved the handgun. He kept it from view, had his fingers off the trigger, and kept the safety lock engaged so that the gun would not accidentally discharge, or in the event that Mr. Fraga somehow got control of the gun, he wouldn't likely have been able to use it. He did what he was supposed to do. He called the police. He didn't not call them. He called 911 as soon as he could. Although Ben now realizes...
Sir, please.
I want to,
No.
I want to be able to talk to.
Well, we'll see at that point, sir. We'll see at that point.
That's Mr. Fraga's father,
Yeah.
for the record.
Remember,
Who was not there, by the way.
I run the
Mr.
meeting. Sir, sir, I run the meeting. If anyone continues this stuff, I'm going to ask you to leave. So please, you can listen, this and that.
It's not a courthouse, it's a town meeting.
That's right, it's not a courthouse. Okay,
Not a courthouse.
Mr. Fraga, please, okay, please. Okay, Attorney Eller.
Although Ben now realizes it would have been a wise practice to lock the doors after last call, I've already told you that, and the posted closing time, he had never had a problem in the nearly 2 years that he had run the restaurant. Whenever anyone had come into the lobby after closing time in the past, he would tell them he was closed. Reasonable people take reasonable actions. They turn around and they leave. If you're closed, you're closed. He was also not aware of Mr. Fraga's lengthy history and reputation for violence in other establishments. If he had known that, he would have called the police immediately upon his entry and his failure to leave. I was able to check some court records with respect to Stephen Fraga. I'm not going to go into them other than to say that there have been several instances where he's been charged with disorderly conduct, assault and battery with dangerous weapon, both in the Milford court. In other courts, he was found guilty of assault and battery on a police officer in the Rentham District Court in 2005. He was found guilty, I believe, in 2009 or thereabouts in Framingham for drunk driving. Most of his cases, I will say, Uh, He was able to admit sufficient facts and get continuances without findings, which means that after serving a period of probation, in some instances making restitution, those cases were dismissed. My client had no knowledge of any of that. Frankly, I had no knowledge of it until I did some research and checked some public records to see what was there. So, in some senses, what happened that night, sort of like, the movie or the book, The Perfect Storm. Things just lined up that night. Nobody would have foreseen it. My client could not have possibly foreseen what the end result was going to be by his having a lengthy conversation, an innocent conversation, with Albert Azevedo that led him to lose track of time. Okay, so the door was unlocked and Mr. Fraga comes in at 1:30. I think that my client used reasonable and made reasonable judgments during that situation. As you can well imagine, it was a very scary and frightening situation, not just for him, but for everybody else who was there. The only people who got served anything after hours that night was Mr. Pisani, Mr. De Silva, and Mr. Fraga, and they were not served alcohol. There's absolutely no suggestion that anyone received or was served alcohol after the last call was given at 12:30. There was no alcohol out. There was nothing and the chief, I think, and his officers were satisfied that never occurred. So, as I read the chief's letter to the board, what he cited was that there was a violation of the town regulations because food was served after 1 o'clock, which is when the common victular license was good to. And my client accepts responsibility and acknowledges that, yes, he did serve food after hours in violation of his common victular license. But again, I believe that there were circumstances as to why he did it. There's nobody suggesting that the kitchen was open and that people were being were being served. There's been no suggestion that this has ever happened before. There've been no complaints against my client. He's had a perfect record during the almost 2 years that he has been running the restaurant. So this was a very serious situation. There's no question about it. Everybody in this room can realize the seriousness of what happened and potentially what could have happened. Fortunately, things didn't get totally out of control. And so what I would ask the board to consider is, in whatever decision that you make, should you take any sanctions against the restaurant other than a strong reprimand. I would point out again, this was the first incident involving Benjamin Eng. I would point out again the long and storied history of the Royal Buddha over 29 years with minimal issues of violations. I would point out again the unusual and unforeseen actions of Stephen Fraga, whose history and propensity for violence was not known to Mr. Eng. I would point out again that he took prompt and decisive actions by calling the police. He tried to defuse the situation by safely and prudently getting his handgun, but applying the safety measures taught to him by Sergeant Sanchione. I would point out again that he's now going to take steps to prevent anything like this happening again. I would point out again, there was no alcohol. He didn't violate the serving provisions. There was no alcohol served, no suggestion it was. There was actually no food sold because he told them it's on the house. So he wasn't making a profit by selling food after hours. Finally, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen of the board, I would suggest that there are preventive actions that my client has already taken and will take in the future. I can tell you that we had Mr. Fraga served last week with a no trespass order. A copy of that was hand-delivered by me to Chief O'Laughlin, I think last Friday. Police Department have that on record. Mr. Eng has now installed a state-of-the-art surveillance system that is already in use on the interior of the restaurant. And as soon as the weather gets a little better, they'll be installing cameras on the exterior of the building so that there'll always be, video of all the goings and comings at that restaurant in the future. I've advised him, and he's agreed, that he will start locking the door at closing time. So if closing time is 1 a.m., the door gets locked at 1 a.m. Even if people have to have a half hour to finish what they're eating or drinking, then he would have to go, or an employee would go and unlock the door to let those people out. That will prevent people coming in after hours. And the other thing that he's learned and that he will apply is that there'll be a strict adherence to the hours of operation, regardless of a person's relationship to him or his family. In other words, Alfred Azevedo was like a family member. He got caught up in conversation with him. That will never happen again with anyone, because he will vigilantly observe closing times. So, obviously, Mr. Chairman, we're here. We'll answer whatever questions you or the board might have. Chief is taking notes. We'd be happy to answer any questions that he or Mr. Moody might have.
Thank you, Attorney Heller. I think at this time, we'll go to the board members for any questions for Jerry or Warren. Brian?
Yes, Brian.
Okay. First of all, let me just commend you and Attorney Heller for a very comprehensive presentation. I think you gave a good recitation of the facts and what occurred that night. But I have a couple of questions. You mentioned Mr. Azevedo frequently. I didn't see his name show up anywhere. Was he present during all these events?
Yes, he was.
Okay, and why didn't he give a statement to the police?
We have no idea.
Was it communicated to the police that he was there?
I believe so. I'm not sure. If I could speculate, Mr. Murray, I think Mr. Azevedo is caught in an awkward position, because Mr. Azevedo has been a friend of the Eng family for a long time, and it's my understanding that he is also a close friend of the Fraga family. And I think that Mr. Azevedo preferred to not get involved. I specifically did not contact him out of respect for his, what I thought was his desire to stay neutral.
And that certainly may be the case, but I think it's a little curious that at least your client didn't mention that in his statement, that there was another individual there who could perhaps, give some information as to what occurred or didn't occur.
The only thing I can tell you is that he, as indicated by Detective Mastriani, as you could well imagine, the night in question, he was very shaken. I thought he gave a very comprehensive written statement under the circumstances. Detective Mastriani the next day said that he basically gave him pretty much the same statement. I spent a good deal of time questioning my client more than once in order to get to the comprehensiveness of the facts that I was able to present to you.
And I can understand that, and I certainly appreciate how an event like this can be upsetting and confusing. It is difficult to try to reconstruct what occurred. But I think some of the things that I heard didn't necessarily match what the statement was from Mr. Ing, and then also the subsequent, or I guess maybe prior, no, subsequent, I think Mastriani talked to him after he did the written statement.
Correct.
It's just a little bit different in a couple of the spots. I'm not sure if it's germane, but for example, once Mr. Eng informed Mr. Fraga that he had the gun, I think you said that Mr. Fraga then backed off and didn't do anything. No,
No.
that's not what
No,
happened?
what I said was that he first told him he had the gun to stop,
Okay,
and that Fraga just ignored him. At that point, the gun was behind his back. He hadn't shown it to him.
okay,
That's when he got punched in the face.
okay,
He backed up and he said to him again, "Steve, I have a gun, stop." And that's when he got punched in the eye.
okay,
It was only when he then raised the gun and put it in front of him like this and showed him the gun that Stephen Fraga let go of his throat, put his hands up in the air and took a step backwards.
At some point, did some of the other customers come in and intervene at that point?
As we indicated, that's when Mr. Kevier, and again, I believe it was Mr. Azevedo, kind of jumped on Fraga's
Okay.
back and was restraining him. That's when my client ran out the front door and flagged down the police officer.
Okay, all right, okay.
I believe that his statement is consistent, Mr. Murray.
It is, and my apologies, I
Oh, that's all right.
must have missed that in the presentation, because that's, what in fact, the written statement talks about individuals customers coming at that point to break them apart, and then the interview with Mastriani said that upon Ing telling Fraga he had the gun, Fraga responded again by telling Ing that he would kill him and punched him in the eye, and that's what you just indicated.
Exactly.
And then from that point, Ing says he ran outside to get help. There's no question, it's just a horrible event. I guess, my thoughts on it, regardless of how they were there and whether they were, getting food on the house, or if you read some of this, it looked as though they had ordered food. I think the responsibility, needs to be there for being after hours. And I certainly don't, fault you or hold anything against you for the manner in which you protected yourself. I don't consider that unreasonable at all, given the circumstances you have faced. But, it is a restaurant and bar, and the time limits are set there for a reason. And, I think there has to be some responsibility for the time situation. Again, what you were confronted with, there's no question that you were confronted with the threat of immediate bodily harm. There's no question about that at all. If the events are as Attorney Heller indicated, it's just unfortunate that those individuals came at that particular time. But I still do consider it significant that there was this activity at 2:15 in the morning, or even 2 o'clock in the morning, or even 1:30 on a Thursday night, with these number of individuals there, because there were quite a few people there. And, was it the proximate cause? I don't know if it was the proximate cause, but it was certainly a cause for the situation. But, in terms of how you defended yourself, I certainly couldn't say that it was unreasonable. But those are the only comments I have.
Okay, for now, yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I find enough consistency between the police's version and the version that the Attorney Heller just laid out. So I don't question the version of events, and I'm certain that you could get 10 people in the same room and have slightly differing versions. I also appreciate the fact that, based on the provided statements, that Mr. Eng did fear for his own personal safety, so I don't question the manner in which he defended himself. And I think that's consistent with the police department's findings and the decision not to press charges. I don't necessarily see a direct causal relationship between the hours and the fight that broke out. You could easily say that on that night, those people there wouldn't have been a fight. But I don't know that the same events couldn't have occurred the night before or the night after, during the hours that the restaurant was open within its license. So having said that, I think at least what I can see is a technical violation. And I thought the council did a great job in explaining some of the surrounding circumstances. So, you know, from my perspective, I do see, yes, the bar was open beyond its licensed hours. I think counsel for the license holder has admitted to that and provided some background, and I think it provides some, that background provides some additional guidance for this board in how it moves forward in terms of severity of any sanction.
Jerry, anything else from your end?
No, there's nothing I can really add. You've got everything before you. You had the reports. You know what it is. You've got to determine what's best, and you have to deal with a level of consistency. And no disrespect to anything that was said, but again, as I indicated in the beginning, your regulations, the ABC regulations, create a level of strict liability, strict responsibility for these kind of activities, and your board has enforced that strict liability in the past. So you obviously, it's a tough decision, but it's one you're going to have to make.
Yeah, there's no question. I agree with the comments made by Brian and Bill. Difficult situation. These are things that have to be brought to our board. It has been. The charges were against you, sir. And, you know, and I understand Attorney Heller's testimony, and it was, you know, quite elegant, and that, I'm sure, is the case, but still after 1 o'clock. You have to watch it. We've been involved with some of these in the past, and you know, we're talking about the general public. We have witnesses who made statements. We have those. Attorney Heller is representing you. The police department has made out some criminal complaints against a couple of people, and we're not going to discuss those because that's between the police and the individuals themselves. But going forward, whatever the board decides, those mitigations that Attorney Heller has brought out, I think those are most important. And above that, you have to do whatever you have to do to make sure, because you're the owner of the establishment. Whatever happens, it's your, you know, the buck falls with you. And, you know, going forward, you know, hopefully all those types of situations will cease to the best degree possible, and that you'll close at 1 and there'll be no one in there and all that. So with that, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion, but, you know, before I do so, typically it's been my practice on any of these hearings involving license holders, I review the files that I have on the license holder, at least since I've been a member of the Board of Selectmen. In doing so with the Royal Buddha, I go back to December 10th, 2002, and correspondence was sent by this board noting that the premises and the immediate environment were the subject of an excessive and troublesome level of disturbances requiring police responses. Transgressions did not warrant action at that time, but it was essentially a warning letter that was provided. May 6, 2003, again, Police Chief Tom O'Laughlin provided this board with a list of incidents that have occurred at various establishments. The establishment of Royal Buddha was on that list, and the request was for the license holder to meet with the police chief in the next 30 days to develop a measure and a plan to reduce or eliminate incidents at the establishment. 2006, it was noted that the license holder did in fact work with the police chief, and incidents and disturbances at the business were reduced. December 1st, 2009, again, this board sent a section of the annual license establishment activity report for the period of January through November of 2009. There were many troubling incidents that have occurred and been reported at the establishment. The Board of Selectmen at that time was gravely concerned unless corrective action is taken immediately. Again, the request with the license holder to meet with the police chief to develop a plan and strategy to address those issues. There was correspondence from the police department December 9th, 2009, indicating that the police department felt the need for an increase of patrol checks of the parking area, assigning an officer to monitor the closing on Friday and Saturday evenings, and the patrol supervisors were ordered to report directly to the chief of police of any incidents at the establishment. March 30th, 2010, there was correspondence from this board to the Royal Buddha indicating that the establishment was listed a number of times on the Attorney General's list of individuals convicted of operating under the influence of alcohol and where they had their last drink. We sent that to the owner, asking them to be more aware of the issue and that they remain vigilant. April 13th, 2010, again, the Board of Selectmen reviewing the police report of the chief, indicating grave concern with the number of reported incidents at the establishment. The license holder was invited to attend the Selectmen's meeting on April 26, 2010, at which time we discussed the operation of the establishment. From that meeting, correspondence was generated April 27th, 2010, and the plan was as follows. No trespass orders would be utilized by the license holder to various individuals. The parking lot area would be monitored, and the license holder was going to explore the possibility of installing cameras in the parking lot area. And that's all of the information that I have on record since I've been a member of the board. So, while no one incident was particularly troubling enough to cause a license hearing, as Attorney Heller indicated, the fact of the matter is there have been a number of situations that have occurred at this place, and this board has bent over backwards to allow the license holder to continue to operate as always without any penalty at all. And I think that's part of the philosophy of this board, that we don't want to hurt license holders, we don't want to hurt businesses, we want to allow people the opportunity to conduct business in this town fairly and evenly. And quite frankly, I think that this license holder has been given a number of chances to do these things. I certainly disagree with my colleague vehemently when I say that but for being open at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, this fight would not have occurred. It's possible it occurred at another night. It's possible the world could end tomorrow. But in all probability, if you're closed at the proper time, this doesn't happen. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking to make a motion that we reduce the hours of operation to the Royal Buddha. And if you just bear with me one time, I just want to check the license to confirm. And I would be looking to, motion would be to remove the, to reduce the hours of operation to 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and to 12 o'clock, midnight, on Friday. And, you know, we've done it in the past with the license holder. As part of the motion, I would call for a 6-month review to have the license holder in for a status meeting to see how the operation has been with a view towards restoring hours. Now, before I leave the floor, I want to emphasize that I am not putting in my motion any type of suspension for your business, okay? And the previous license holder that had this kind of a penalty invoked did have a suspension. But I draw a distinction between that incident and this incident in the sense that I don't disagree that you acted reasonably once confronted with the situation. And clearly, none of your employees put customers in harm or at physical peril. But I feel that the incident is directly related to the late hour of operation, and my motion goes towards preventing that from happening again. So I
Thank you,
hope
Brian.
I'm clear with that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Gene, you have that motion? Bill?
Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss that motion. You know, first I want to start off by reminding at least this board that when we license liquor establishments and restaurants, they're not holding choir practice there, that folks are going out to dinner and folks are drinking, and it's not everybody that can either hold that liquor, or if they weren't served in this establishment, could have been served in another one, or could have drank alcohol at home or done whatever. You know, I find the motion too onerous in terms of, you know, I frankly put the bulk of the responsibility on individuals outside of the restaurant, not part of the establishment. And I didn't see anything. I was specifically looking for instances where the behavior of the staff put people at risk. Again, I think much of the burden falls on the patrons, and with that, I wouldn't support that motion. It's not bound in time, other than to say a review. It's far too excessive in terms of this case, so I wouldn't support that at this time.
Okay. I guess it's my turn. We always try to be fair and look at different situations. There was a similar establishment that, matter of fact, I think made the motion at that particular time for 6 months, rolling back the hours, okay? I think Mr. Eng also, I knew there were 3 or 4 situations, but as Attorney Murray read the situations with the incidents, I believe there were probably 7 or 8 incidents over the years. And I think every time we try to give you an opportunity, or maybe it wasn't warranted, a type of suspension or whatever the case may be. But I think in the aggregate and what happened here, I think from what we've done in the past, being fair, I think it is, you know, something that is justifiable in doing. So we have a motion by Brian. Is there a second? No second? I would second the motion. Now, I also have to state again that Attorney Heller gave the situations, the mitigating factors, why it happened. But I think looking at the whole picture and then looking at what happened on March 7th, and hopefully you can, you know, look at this as going forward. And but I think as far as fairness and everything else and the protection of everyone involved, it's probably the right thing to do. So I would second the motion that Attorney Murray has made. And can you read back the motion, Attorney Valani, please?
reports.
Motion by Attorney Murray to reduce the hours of operation Monday through Thursday and Saturday and Sunday to 11 p.m. And further, to reduce the hours of operation on Friday to 12 midnight. He then called for a 6-month review to have the licensee in for a status hearing to look at the past 6 months and determine what, if anything, should be done further.
Okay, thank you. The board, as I stated at the onset of the hearing, we don't like doing these things. We've had a few situations. We've worked very closely with the police chief over the past many years as far as reports, disciplining some establishments because of incidents that occurred. And so we try to be fair, we try to be just, and I think at one time or another, we've all had different feelings about different situations, but I think that when two members of the board feel that something is justified in doing, then I think in this particular case. So we have a motion, it was seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Two in favor, one opposed, and Selectman Buckley feels that it was too stringent. And so with that, I will close the hearing, and we thank everyone for showing up. You conducted yourselves as gentlemen and ladies. These things are very difficult. And, we try to do the best we can, and we heard the testimony, and the board made a decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you, Warren. We have a motion on the warrant.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by
Second.
Bill, seconded by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? And on the approval of the minutes of March 24th?
Move to approve the minutes of March 24th with the following amendments. At number 1, under the regular session, I would ask that it be included that I stated that I would not be participating in the executive session. And then under number 1 of the minutes of executive session, I would ask that it be clearly indicated that I in fact left the room, and my vote could not have been an abstention, but it was in fact an absence.
We have an amendment proposed by Brian. Is there a second?
Yeah, can we take up the minutes of the executive session in executive session, because I also have a recommendation there as well. So I'm happy to
Second.
second the motion for the regular session
Okay.
and ask that we take up executive session in executive session.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. And we'll do, okay? Okay, next is, this, Mellow Palm? Oh, okay, sir. Come on up front, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Have a seat, sir. Just give me 1 second, okay? Okay. You must be, Tony Mitchell?
Yes, I am. I'm Tony Mitchell,
Oh, okay,
born and raised here in Massachusetts,
okay.
living in Acton now.
And this is, let me see, for a fortune teller.
Yes, unfortunately, we had a accident. A vehicle ran right into the building, and the structure of the building is not safe, so
Okay.
we had to move to another area.
And that is
81
East Main Street, okay?
Yes,
And the hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., correct?
yes.
Okay. How long had you been at the other situation, sir? The other location?
Almost a year.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just looking at the notice that all the town officials have to sign off on, everything seems to be okay. And, okay. Brian, any questions?
No questions.
Bill, any questions?
No questions.
So is there a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Maybe we'll come down and see you sometime, huh?
No problem on that,
You have to
sir.
give us good news, though, right?
Of course, exactly.
Okay.
Very good, and have a good evening.
Okay. Good luck, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, sir.
Okay, next is Jennifer Demanch Yon on the farmer's market. believe Jennifer is here with Kate Mastriani and John Tian. How are you? Okay, look, Jen, we talked a little bit before the meeting
We did.
began. It was very interesting. You have a new location, and I asked the town administrator to call the chief today just to bounce this off him to have his, because he is the department that reviews all these things, and he may have some comments later on. But I think last year was, very successful. I believe people of Milford like it, and they want us to see it continue. And with that, we'll turn it over to you, okay?
Well, we just wanted to come in front of you guys and thank you all for letting us get started last year. In addition, I think I've talked to every single department in Town Hall sometime between October of last year and today. So that help has been extremely useful. Everybody has been great about answering questions and helping us get where we need to be. So we're really looking forward to a great year. We have a lot of things planned. We have a lot of community events and outreach that we want to do this year. We have additional vendors. We have a new site that will allow us to have more space that is better for the vendors. Traffic's a little bit of an issue, but we've been hoping to work with the police department as well as whatever we can do to make sure it's not as big of an issue as we have foreseen so far. And we've really gotten our, we have a new board. Kate is the secretary. John's our vice president. David Morganelli is still with us. He's our special counsel. And Carolyn, our treasurer. So it's really speeding up. And I think this year is going to be the middle year where things kind of work themselves out, and then it's just going to get bigger and better for the community.
When I read this, Jennifer, I really liked the structure, the mission statement, the principles, the terms and conditions, food vendor participation, the permits, licenses that will be needed.
Yes.
On page 2, it says, "The scales used at the market shall be sealed and inspected."
Yes.
And who's that?
I
Responsibility
believe-
is that?
I believe it's through the Board of Health. That was something that I think we all worked together on. Paul and Lisa have been
Okay.
fantastic with, this was our, part of what we did during the winter. We coordinated with them to try and take some of the burden of the permitting and the application process off of their shoulders like it was last year. Basically, everything was going to them, and they were, they have enough to do. So we've tried to streamline it so our regulations are also in line with theirs, as well as the state's, which are very important.
Okay. It seems from last year, and of course, last year was the first year, it worked out very well. David did a very nice job.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be, there seems to be a lot of, more rules, stipulations where the vendors have to do certain things, and they have to comply with the regulations as adopted by your board.
They were there last year, or we talked about it last year. They were things that we told them they had to do. It was just, it was short, it was sweet, it was off the cuff last year. And yeah, we formalized everything. Part of it we did because we didn't want there to be a problem in the future. Another part of it was that we have filed for, or we will be filing for 501c3 status, as well as registering for WIC and SNAP benefits, so that we can offer those to people in the community who might want to take advantage. So we really had to, working with the Mass Department of Agriculture as well as the USDA,
Okay.
have to have it on board.
And I also like the event calendar
Yes.
draft.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, so tell us why you want to go to Dilla Street.
Well, we would have loved to stay here. It was great. It was downtown. It was nice and central. Unfortunately, part of why we need to move is because it is 100% asphalt. It's in sun from 9:30 a.m. And I don't know if you've ever walked on that side of Town Hall, not just in passing. It's a wind tunnel. But the main part is that in July, when you're on asphalt, it gets to be extraordinarily hot. So it not only ruins product, but it's very uncomfortable for people to walk on. I talked to markets in Ashland and Hopkinton and Natick, and the general consensus is if you can get off of asphalt, to do it immediately. So for everybody's good, not just our own or our vendors, because no, we could have 15 vendors on asphalt, but our customers aren't going to come either. And that doesn't help with their community outreach or anything of that nature.
And Jennifer, this property, the location will be where?
The Milford Water Company.
Okay.
And it's along the back and the side. We're distinctly trying to stay away from traffic. We want to be able to be seen, but we don't want there to be any kind of incident where someone's paying attention to a tent or a vendor that is, you know, very, very close to the road, and have there be any kind of incident where they veer, and so we're going to be back and farther away.
So it would seem that that location is a lot more spacious for the vendors, and you probably have a lot more parking than you had here.
We did add parking. There's limited parking here. You could park along the side streets, but that was limited to if there were spots available. So really all that we had here was the parking on the opposite side, as well as, I think there are 6 to 8 spots on the front, 2 of which are handicapped. I believe we added 4 handicap spots by moving. So hopefully it's more conducive. And above and beyond that, the Milford Water Company property actually intersects with the walking trail. So there's the availability of people to go, you know, park at Louisa Lake, take a nice little stroll. It's only, I believe, 3/4 of a mile or something like that between Louisa Lake and that area. It's a great little family outing.
Because I think we have to watch it walking on Dilla Street at certain times. It's
Yeah, we'll not do, we don't want anyone walking on Dilla Street. I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy. But, you know, up behind, it's a nice little stroll along that
Sure.
beautiful,
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
that beautiful
And so
trail.
if everything works out well, you plan on opening when, starting
June 7th
till?
through October 4th.
Okay.
So, and we'd really love to have you guys out with us. We
Yeah,
have
we
some,
read that, okay.
we have some great events, you know. I believe Senator Moore and Mr. Fernandez, Representative Fernandez have also said that they are, you know,
Well, they
willing.
can start first and then
We'll,
can
we'll let
follow.
them work the bugs out, but, you know,
We'll
know,
have them work
outreach.
the end of July, hot summer day.
Should we ask them to come in black suits? Yes, we do have ice cream this year, so I don't know. So, you know, we just wanted to come in and say thank you, get your input, comments.
Yeah, I know the chief will have some recommendations and comments in a second, but we'll go to the board members. Brian?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is great. It's wonderful to see a private corporation doing this. You know, this was the kind of structure that, you know, initially I really wanted to see. And, you know, the 501c3 status, that's perfect for your organization. You know, this is exactly the kind of structure that, you know, I contemplated last year when this got off the ground. So it's a very good setup. It makes a lot of sense, regardless of whether you're gonna be on town property or private property. This is the structure, this is the format that you need. So I think it's great. You've done a nice job putting together the corporate structure, and then also the use rules and regulations. So I think it's a great event. It's really a nice format, the way you've got it molded right now. It's in its proper context.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've had the benefit of being down there quite a few times.
Did you buy anything?
I did, as a matter of fact. Too much in some cases, but,
There's no such thing.
you know, I find this extremely beneficial. I think the farmer's market is a great idea. I was happy when David Morganelli brought it forward. I'm extremely pleased to continue to support it this year. You know, it's my hope that we can get you off of Dilla Street and get you more centrally located, and maybe there's land and space available. So, you know, I would ask if this board would work with the town planner and ask Mr. Villani to work with the town planner to see what zoning obstacles are presented that would prevent a farmer's market. Say at a local school, more centrally located, maybe where there's less traffic concerns. I understand why you're there this year.
Yep.
I know your committee has looked at a lot of sites and are specifically prohibited as a result of zoning, but there should be no barrier in our zoning that prevents a farmer's market, say at a school location. And that's my opinion, because I realize that any changes to that certainly require town meeting approval. But I would do that and ask that those considerations for changes happen as fast as possible, so that whatever we need to do to enable the farmers market to continue to be successful, continue to thrive, continue to be a place where families go and visit and socialize. There was as much of that as there were sales and produce going on. I would ask that that happen quickly so that we can help this group preparing for next year, because next year will come fast, and that location would have to be sited and scoped, and we'd obviously, if we were to go forward with a change, that would require town meeting approval. But I just sometimes find that, you know, not all things that were enacted 20, 30 years ago considered farmers markets. And I think about Brookside School as an example, and that's one that comes to mind. And I'm not fixed on that, but just as an example, that may be a great location, maybe in the back, I don't know, maybe in the front. I hear your concerns about the asphalt, so I'll let you guys work with the planner and decide where it is that ought to go. But we shouldn't have zoning barriers to farmers markets. And if it grows too big, and it's too large as a result of that, means we've had a great success, and then we'll take on those challenges, because you had to grow with this. Last year, you talked about, you know, putting some, you know, loose structure around it, and it was largely successful. So I can only imagine what this year is going to bring and what future years are going to bring to your organization. And thank you for doing it. And I thank David. He's not here now.
Yeah.
I know David was a big champion. Thank you, and I'm supportive of it.
Thanks, Bill. Kate, this must be your idea. Literacy, what is that about?
I can't take credit for that, but thank you.
It was a joint effort. Of course it was.
What is that? What is that?
Actually, we have spoken with the Friends,
Friends of the library.
and just to see if there's anything that we could do together. That
Good.
There's also a literacy organization that I have a meeting with on Wednesday.
Good.
So
So we'll really make it cultural, educational, and all that, so it's good. I like that.
there's a little bit of everything for everybody in there. It's,
Wow.
you know,
There's a Meet Your Government Day, you know, too.
Oh,
so.
okay.
so, you know, we really,
As long as they take the tomatoes out of the cans, I'm okay with it.
So I think at this time, we'll go to the chief, because I think the traffic is most important, and the chief will give us some comments, recommendations, and then we'll go from there, okay? Chief?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jennifer reached out to us early on, and I assigned Lieutenant Jim Falvey to work with her. They've been to the site, Jim has attended meetings to see how we can coordinate things. Clearly, it goes without saying that Dilla Street can be a traffic nightmare, to say the least. You know, it's a commuter route. And then on the weekends, you have people that are going to the various, you know, businesses, Lowe's and the other businesses up in that
Transfer
area. So-
station.
Right, so there's quite a bit of traffic. In fact, in looking at the speed signs, I just finished Dilla Street. So in a 7-day period, you had 23,463 cars on Dilla Street in 7 days.
42 miles an hour, right?
Exact. That was the 85th percentile, you're correct. So you read the memo, thank you. Aside from that, over a 2-year period, 2012, 2013, you had 46 motor vehicle accidents on that street. So traffic's an issue on the street. You have one egress and exit at the water company. If you recall back on the water crisis, and they're going to distribute the water,
please.
that was the concern.
Right.
Yeah.
Trying to get people in and out. So it's something that clearly the farmers market, the committee, they recognize it as a concern. They have had the discussions with Jim Falvey. So at this point, we've committed that we'll keep an eye on it, give it a look. I do think a number of people will come to the market via the trail, using bicycles or walking and parking elsewhere. So they get the benefit of both things at the same time. But we're going to work closely with them, and if there are any issues that come up, we'll address them at that time. Aside from that, the committee has put together a safety day and invited both police and fire representatives, and it's a day that, you know, we're going to have people come out from Smart 911 with computers, and hopefully we'll hit some Wi-Fi and be able to sign some people up. At minimum, we'll be able to give people the literature so that they can go home and create their own profiles, Smart 911. But we'll have other items for
Maybe, Chief,
families.
if you have it, give out some helmets to the kids or
Yeah, we're
bicycle riding and all that stuff, some
Right,
instructions.
Jim's in the process of trying to, Lieutenant Falvey, trying to track down through the state to see if there's availability of grant funds, because they distribute the helmets to us from the Executive Office of Public Safety.
Sure.
so.
And Chief, you'll be able to provide us with some recommendations before they begin and all that, so the board will have it.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, we've looked at their plans as far as traffic and things coming in and out, and I think it's gonna be really an act of waiting and seeing each day,
Okay.
you know, that they have a market, and if issues crop up, whether or not we, you know, cause vehicles to have to go right, or, you know, if the cars are queuing up too far from the lights at Cedar and Dilla. So Lieutenant Falvey, you know, I'm going to assign him on a couple of the first Saturdays so that I have someone that's really taken a good look at it, and then we'll take a look at what we need to do.
Okay.
If it means we put an auxiliary officer there, but we'll work something out.
All right, Chief. Yeah, any,
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, traffic, no question, is difficult on Dilla Street, but it's not as difficult on Saturday as it is Monday through Friday.
Right.
So that's a little hopeful. But am I hearing correctly? Do you want to be at a school?
I would prefer to be somewhere a little more central, somewhere that has more parking. I mean, there's much more parking.
But I mean, Bill
you know.
mentioned Brookside, but I don't know, there's.
No.
It's
all
Plains
asphalt.
Park could be
Plains
another
Park,
one.
It's all asphalt. I mean, I didn't know, that didn't seem to,
Brookside's kind of hard because there's limited space, but I mean,
Okay.
most of the schools, actually, we've driven, when we originally thought we would be able to go to a park within town or at one of the schools, most of them have an area that would fit. I know that Brookside was one of the suggestions that the planning board specifically brought up when we went before them
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. We could make Brookside work. We can make anything work one way or
so
another.
I mean, you're not prohibited from going to Brookside right now, are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything, all town parks, and all schools are currently residentially zoned, and we're required to be within a commercial zone.
Okay.
Unfortunately, most of the commercial property in Milford is either asphalt or heavily built upon. So, I mean, what we were trying to do, and we had brought up Plains Park and Town Park, or towards the Stacy School originally, way, way, way back before we knew.
Right, sure, yeah.
Because both of them are centrally located. Part of why we looked at it was because the library is actually closed in the summer, so if we did something near Stacy, it would be,
Yeah.
wouldn't be a traffic issue, and it's right off Main. But I mean, there are multiple properties that we could potentially use. We're just prohibited currently from doing so.
For me, the town, because it seems like Town Park or maybe Plains Park might make the most sense.
Plains Park, we did a survey on our website, and Plains Park and Town Park were pretty much neck and neck. Plains
Yeah.
Park took a little bit of a squeeze out because a lot of parents said that they were already there. They were there with their kids watching them play soccer, and I mean,
Right.
it's kind of like a captive audience at the same time, and it just adds to that whole community feel, which is in essence what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You want the community involved, so
Yeah.
sometimes you actually have to grab them and say, you need to enjoy this, and they get it, and then they come back next week.
Well, then, I mean, that's a good point, then, if we need to work towards a change in the zoning laws to, you know, and you've consulted with the Parks Commission about,
I never talked to the parks because
Okay.
I believe I talked to
Larry Duncan?
Larry.
okay,
There was a meeting where we were told it was, you know, and that started the process of let's find something.
Okay.
And many hours
well,
of
I mean,
driving.
maybe, you know, like Bill says, maybe that is something to work towards for next year, you know, to start that process, that dialogue with the Parks Commission. I mean, I think you need to get them on board
Right.
early on.
Yes.
I mean, you know, to see if that's compatible. You're talking about Saturdays in the summertime, right? Okay, so you're running into softball, you know, you're running into soccer, you know, I think lacrosse. I'm not a lacrosse parent, but they seem to be out there all the time. So you've got to try to work around those schedules and locations.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
mean, one of the
That's okay.
only other options was Pheno Field, but only a portion of Pheno Field, and
Yeah.
we didn't want to do that because it's not visible. So for anybody who doesn't read
See it, right.
Milford Patch,
Yeah.
is unlikely to know it's there.
Yeah, okay.
So I mean,
Well, that's good. You're definitely in a period of growth.
For the town crier.
Take one
the
step
town
at a
crier,
time.
but that only comes out once. What is it, every 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
Every 2 weeks.
Jennifer, we can help you with that. We can have, work with Attorney
Take
Valani,
a look at it. Yeah,
getting the right
definitely.
people together, and we can help you out with that.
Absolutely. Good.
It's all a learning curve.
Sure.
We've never done this,
Yep.
but people have reacted phenomenally. So
Great job last
Oh, it's a
year.
great thing to bring to the
Yeah.
town, no question.
we're trying.
Okay, so nice job with that.
Thank
Kate,
you.
congratulations on your reelection,
Yes.
Thank you.
and appreciate it. And like I said, in a few weeks, give Rick a call, and we can get the right people together and have that meeting and
Appreciate that.
see about next year.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you. Okay, that concludes the public hearing schedule appointments. At this time, we'll go to the,
He's been waving to me. I'll wave to him.
well, sir, we already had citizen participation, but I can get you in a little while, okay? I just want to go on with some of the agenda. Then we'll go to you, all right? Town administrators report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, all budgets, again, under jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, are on target. I want to provide an update regarding the installation of the windows at Town Hall. 19 of the windows on the second floor of Town Hall have been removed. 10 of those have actually been reglazed, repainted, and reinstalled. They still need to have the balances adjusted and installed and have touch-up painting done. We expect 9 other windows to be reinstalled next week. At that time, the remaining windows for the upper Town Hall will be removed and taken to GVW shop to be worked on. They then will begin work on the first floor and the basement windows, hopefully in the beginning of May. So I'm pretty satisfied right now with the progress. Both the design engineer we have overlooking the project and our own town engineer have been greatly involved, done great work with this, and so far, so good. The project is on track and working well. One other thing I think the board members know, that the governor's office has sent a letter certifying that the town of Milford's Chapter 90 apportionment for fiscal year 2015 is provisionally $817,285. It is based on the passage of the transportation bond bill. Once that bill is passed, the apportionment is automatically incorporated into our existing 10-year Chapter 90 contract. At that time, the town then will be able to obligate those funds. So that's good news on that front. And that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Any questions for Rick, Brian?
Just quick, I haven't had a chance to get a look at those windows. Are these double glass? Are they thermopane windows?
Yeah, they have it should provide much better insulation
Yeah.
than what we have now, but we are still handicapped with having to deal with the Historical Commission,
So
so
it's the
they don't
same- it's
look,
just-
the glass is double pane, I believe.
Okay.
But, again, they don't look much different when you look at my wife, and people looking at why
Yeah,
they're
no, and
different.
I've seen them working on the windows.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell they look a little nicer, neater, whatever,
Yeah.
cleaner.
They still have to be
you know.
cleaned and repainted and touched
Yeah,
up,
I've
but
seen the new ones go in,
Yeah.
they look nice.
the project is proceeding very well. So far, I'm pleased.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ricky, even the ones that, where the windows are boarded up, it doesn't look that badly, you know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
It's clean.
need
I
to,
mean,
need to
it's
do
not
that.
that
They've
right.
done a nice job doing
Yeah.
that. Again, it's proceeding now that they've done the first batch. It's proceeding a little more quickly since they've had 8 or 9 of them. We've had
learned
our
too.
design architect out to their shop, and we've looked at that also. So, so far, again, pleased so far.
Yep, okay. One of the things Brian and Bill I'll be doing too is, I'm gonna be tweaking the agenda a little bit, no major changes, it's just basically trying to get more information to the board members and to make it better understandable, easier. And we're also, I'm gonna have Rick add a segment where we get involved with a lot of issues sometimes, just to make sure that once a month, he brings us up to date with unfinished business, so at least we'll know
Sure.
what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's very good.
But I think some of these things have to be cleaned up a little, more information, a little bit more of an explanation, but we'll get that done by the next meeting. On the road business, just so that, as far as a future meeting, On the 28th of April, we will be discussing the articles in depth and information and anything that the board members need, as we begin discussing the articles on the warrant. So, just so that you know that. So with that, Rick, town meeting articles?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be looking for the board to sign and approve the final warrant tonight. It is scheduled to go to the printer for reproduction tomorrow. The various boards, FinCom, CIC, Personnel Board, and this board, the deadline would be through May 19th, should you wish to schedule and review any articles. Obviously, it's here for you tonight. I would obviously put it on the April 28th, which would be our next Selectmen's meeting, most likely.
Yes.
Should the board want to consider talking about articles at that time.
No, it'll be on.
But right now, I'm looking at least tonight to sign and approve the final warrant. I have the original here.
And this is being,
Obviously, if we tweak it, then we'll deal with it.
this is being asked, Rick, because it's going to the printer tomorrow?
Tomorrow, it goes for reproduction, correct.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve.
I'm sorry, Brian, I don't mean to interrupt. One other thing I do want to bring up before we do that is there was one additional article that the board was made aware of involving the Capital Improvement Committee. That is not on the current warrant, so should the board wish to add that, we can still do that, but I wanted to make the board aware of that, so that they could at least vote on that one way or the other. And then obviously I would want to vote to sign and approve the final warrant tonight. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, Brian.
That's okay, yeah, I was looking to make a motion to approve the annual town meeting warrant as you handed to us tonight.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
The 37 articles as opposed to the copy that I had previously, which had 36 articles.
That's correct, there was one
And it
additional one
does
that
not
was omitted.
include the article that was submitted by the CIC.
Correct, sir.
Yes.
Bill?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to second for the purposes of the discussion. Specifically, this board hasn't taken up any real meaningful discussion as it relates to Article 17. And with that, I remain opposed to transferring land to out-of-town people,
You mean the trustees,
trustees. So I'm okay with Article 17, where it says, see if the town will vote pursue Mass General Law 40, Section 15, transfer care and custody jurisdiction to of 5 town-owned parcels to the Milford Conservation Commission. What I'd make a motion to do is strike, and in addition, that next paragraph. And also, I don't think if the town is going to manage those properties under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, it would need any funds. So, and further to seek a vote to raise appropriate transfer. I guess what my concern is, and I want to be very clear about this, I'm okay with signaling to the community and to signaling to town meeting that we would like to preserve that space. What I'm not willing to do is put 200 acres in the care and custody of people who are out of town and are not Milfordians. I don't feel any strong desire to handcuff future generations of Milfordians into doing something because for some reason we believe we're smarter than them. So I would be opposed to that, and you have my recommendation in terms of altering that.
Okay. Just on Article 17, I think I agree with a lot of the things that you've said, Bill. As a matter of fact, on the Consigli property, many, many years ago, when I talked to the town meeting members, and we had to go twice, one of the things I kept saying was passive recreation, protecting that land because of the water and all that. And, in the past, like I said, we're going to discuss these articles anyway, but if you brought it up, that's fine. I've had a lot of discussions with, many discussions with Vonnie, the town planner. I've even talked to a couple of trustees that, they've done this in different types of communities. Matter of fact, we also did it at Walling Woods. I just feel that, like when we talk about, they'll never build on that land, and then we look about 10 years later, and there's development on it. I never forget when before the Consigli property was purchased by the town, I met with a developer from Framingham. He had called and wanted to ascertain if there's a way that he could, purchase that land and build condos on it and all that. And I told him that, well, we don't really own the land, but as far as I'm concerned, I would be dead set against that because of the sensitivity of the aquifer.
Yeah, me
The
too.
water company, the bike trail, all that. So I'm not saying that things wouldn't be the same, but hey, we could have different Conservation Commission members. We could have a different town meeting. We could have a situation in, 8 or 10 years where the economy's really bad. Things are tight, because at one time, we've gone through that in Milford, as you know, with Proposition 2.5. So I just feel that we have 200 acres, very, very sensitive piece of land. It abuts Louisa Lake, it abuts the bike trail, there's aquifers there. And I think that in the discussions that we've had with the administrator and Larry Duncan and Bonnie, I think we've placed a lot of stipulations in there where the town can go in and do this. That the town can make a parking lot. The water company can go and dig for wells. We can go in and cut, let's say, trees, for example, if there's a need for that. So I think there's probably like 10 or 15 very clearly written exceptions where the town can do certain things. And there could be a couple of more that we could think of before town meeting. So I just feel that, hey, we all care about land, we all care about water. We've done a lot of things in the past with aquifers and Louisa Lake and all that. But we don't know what the future's gonna hold. I just wanna make sure that your kids' kids, that there'll be no one where there'll be a temptation to change something, to change an opinion at the Conservation Commission, and also to go to town meeting. Because like I said, there have probably been 2 or 3 places where residents have said, oh, they'll never build on that. And then guess what? A few years later, there's development. So my feeling is that we should protect it in perpetuity, and it has nothing to do with, I don't feel offended by it. Some of the people that I've talked to, it's not because of education or any type of class. I just think that, in my opinion, if we're gonna protect it, let's protect it so there's no chance at all that area, that land, that aquifer will ever be disturbed, and that there'll never be development on it. So those are my
Okay.
opinions.
And then the only other article, Mr. Chairman, I respect your point of view. We can differ, certainly. And
Well, we're close,
move
it's just
on.
different
Yeah,
things,
different
that's all.
approaches.
Yeah.
It's this approach. And
Yep.
Article 24, I just want to let it be clear that I'm not supportive of Article 24 until we're able to identify what's going to happen with Middle School East. I think there may be even scenarios that may work out through this process that may end up with the J.D. Antonio Youth Center ending up better off. And it's no offense to the committee that we put forward. If we had our way, the town of Milford would have had Woodland School approval through SBA 5 years ago. And so things don't always time out the way we'd like, but I just wanted to signal that and make sure folks understood that. And those are 2 articles that I wouldn't support on this. So if you want to take up the others, I'd be happy to.
All right, like I said, we're gonna discuss these things in depth.
Oh, okay, all right.
On the 28th.
It doesn't have to be tonight then.
There'll be 2 meetings where we discuss them, and this is just to, like we have many times in the past, it goes to the printer, so it can be, sent out, whatever.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be viewed when it hits the Board of Selectmen, when it hits town meeting floor, that it had as Board of Selectmen sponsors as written. I'm not sure how they were written this way, and frankly, I'm not sure of the process that got them written this way, especially where Board of Selectmen are sponsoring them, because we didn't take up a vote prior to them being written. These could have been written in a lot of different ways. So having said that, I would not vote to support those 2 articles, and
right.
ask that we take them up separately for the purposes of tonight, so that at least they know on a 2-to-1 vote that those two articles weren't supported.
The process of writing up has been, it's been going on for a while. Like I said, we will discuss these on the 28th. I'm comfortable with the articles being submitted as is, 37, especially 17.
Okay.
I've given my
Yeah,
rationale.
yeah.
If I could just add, the discussion, I mean, I think from Bill, it's, the question is not right now whether or not you approve of a particular article or not. The question is whether or not we feel the article has merit for the town meeting to
I understand.
discuss, consider, and vote upon. And I don't know what the heck you're talking about when you said Article 24 sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. It's clearly written
I'm
in
talking
Milford.
about article, the other article.
You said both articles are
Okay.
sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. I
My-
don't know what you're
my
talking
mistake.
about, because it said the Milford Armory Renovation Committee.
Okay.
So, clearly, you're free to voice your opinion if this board takes up the substantive nature of these articles, and also at town meeting. But the question we should be deciding right now is whether or not we think that this warrant is deserving of consideration by the town meeting. That's all.
So the
That's all
question,
we're saying.
the question becomes Article
That's all we're saying.
17. How did that article get structured such that it was written the way it was, rather than the other option that Council Moody also provided us?
It was something that all of this board was in favor of until you changed your mind.
That's not true. That's not true.
Let's try to move, Rick.
We hadn't voted on
Yeah.
that, so Brian, I'm not sure how your mind-reading
Rick,
talents are
can you give
working.
some information on how that was done, presented in Article 17?
Article 17, my understanding is.
Always looked at both options that Council Moody provided to us.
Council Moody
We never
did-
voted.
Present both options. The article is written as I see it, in a three-step process. The first step is conservation. Second step, should that proceed, would go to the trustees of reservation. And if it happens that, the third step is the appropriation part of the article.
So the way it's written now,
So
the
that's
town
the
meeting
way,
members
as
will
I
have-
understand, that's
have
the
a
way it
choice.
would go, as
All right.
far as town meeting, so.
All right, let's
There
move on.
was no vote.
So there's a
Bill
motion.
on that.
Is there a motion to accept?
Yeah, I made a motion to adopt the town meeting warrant, as we have in the past, of the 37 articles to present to the town meeting to consider.
And how was it that the CIC's motion or articles were not presented in this packet?
We're gonna talk about that tonight. Rick gave it
But
this
why,
today.
but the question becomes,
if you remember,
why
you-
aren't they here?
Okay, you were given a memo earlier on that by town council, so
So council chose not to add those
at
to
that
this
time,
warrant?
we determined at this point, we would not put that on. Pending a vote by you, we could add it on if we
Sure.
needed to be.
And that was a discussion we had
So
on Friday.
that was,
Oh, What
So my
Friday?
my
What
feeling-
Friday? I'm sorry, what Friday?
Last Friday.
no, I had a discussion with the chairman, that's all that was. There was no discussion among the board members or anything like that.
My feeling is I don't really have a problem if you want to include this article. Jerry wrote a very poignant opinion. I think I wanted to have some discussions with the chairman and myself. I think this is something that came up last year. There was a lot of confusion. I think Jerry has tried to work with the proponent. We haven't had him into our board in a while. I think he came in once during your early on as chairman, but as far as that, there's been no discussion. I don't have a problem with including, one more into the annual town meeting warrant, and then, like I said, we'll discuss it on,
All I'm trying to highlight, Mr. Chairman, is there's something about how this first draft gets done that I think needs to be fixed, because I think we're picking and choosing a little bit of that. If we're saying we want to put everything in front of the town meeting and take votes on individual articles, that's one thing. If that's what members want to hide behind, that's great. But here we've selected from the CIC chair and not put it in this draft. And I'm still not clear, and I'm not getting good answers as to why it wasn't included, other than somebody met with somebody last Friday, and Jerry decided not to add it.
No, we had the
there was a memo a
framework.
while
I
ago.
understand what the memo was from
We
council.
had the framework that we worked off of during your chairmanship, okay, that set the framework down for the warrant. Now, if you, as chairman, felt that that capital improvement committee bylaw merited inclusion, then you should have put it on this list. I
talking about
communicated to
this
the, I
document.
communicated to the town administrator that I did not feel that that bylaw by CIC had enough thought in it and enough research behind it to merit discussion. That's what I did. If you felt that this framework should have been changed, you could have opened your mouth and said that. You chose not to.
That's not
So
true,
that's
Brian.
the-
You
that's
can,
the
you're
framework
entitled to
we
your
have.
opinion, and that's
Okay.
fine.
It's not opinion, it's fact.
As far as.
Well, it's a fact in your world.
Rick talked to me on Friday about this, and he said there was gonna be in the agenda. I said, okay, I go, we'll talk about it. I said, I agree, I think with my board members that last year was very difficult at town meeting. There were many questions, I think it was confusing. I said, too bad we haven't spoken to the chairman of the CIC. And as a matter of fact, I was gonna give him a call, within the next couple of days. I couldn't do it this weekend. So, if you
Can
want
I
to.
speak to
Sir,
Article 17?
I'll call you, sir. I'll call you in a second.
Before the vote, though?
No, the vote has already been taken. We're just talking about one other article. So I'll call you, sir, okay? I told you I'll call you. We had citizen participation. I don't know if you didn't hear me, and
There must have been
there
some
weren't.
noise going on in the room,
Right,
so I thought
okay.
I was paying attention.
But you'll have a chance to address Article 17. The way Article 17 is going to be right now, there was a vote. The only thing we're discussing now is to include another article that was sponsored by the CIC. But Article 17 there'll be different options, and that will be discussed in full on April 28th. Okay? So as far as if there's a motion to include the CIC, we'll make it 38 articles. Is there a motion to include the CIC article? Bill?
I would include it and let the CIC chairman speak, and if it doesn't gain the attention or the votes of the town meeting, I don't know why we'd want to stifle that.
Well, the only thing I know is after last year, make a motion. Make a motion to include.
Well, I think we have a motion on the table to, are you talking about an amendment to include the CIC
Right.
article?
Right.
I'm okay with including it. If we're going to let town meeting vote on these issues, let's let them vote on them.
So far, we have 37, and we're going to make it 38 with the CIC article.
I don't second the amendment. If
Okay.
you want to second it, that's fine.
Okay, is there a motion, Bill?
Yeah, I'd move that we add the CIC, and if we're going to vote on the other articles, I'm not in favor of sponsoring an article by the Board of Selectmen, but I'll vote to let town meeting hear it, and I'll gladly speak at that meeting.
That'll be part of that'll be part of the motion for the record.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a second? I'll second it for the CIC. Any discussion? If not, all in favor to have 38 articles, and that would be the CIC article as written by the chairman of the CIC. All in favor? Opposed? 2 in favor, 1 opposed. Sir, why don't you come up if you have any questions on that? Now, I know you came in about a month ago, and you made a very nice presentation and all that, and I think the board said, I think the chairman said that we would be discussing it. Okay? So my intention was to discuss all the articles at the April 28th meeting. And then we would have another article, another meeting on May 12th, where we could discuss it again. But you have the floor.
Hi there, I'm Jamie Wheelock, and I was here,
Yes.
maybe it was a month ago. I'm really surprised that I missed the point in the meeting tonight where public comment was drawn to a close, because I came here to speak, and I thought I was paying attention,
Well,
but...
you have this floor now, sir.
Well, no, because it's regrettable, because you guys have already voted on the wording, submitting the wording for the warrants to town meeting, because
But
I
it's
spoke...
subject to debate at town meeting. Do you understand? We're just setting the agenda for town meeting to debate and consider. We're not
Mr. Murray.
deciding the articles themselves. We're just setting the debate for town meeting.
Mr. Murray, you're omitting the leadership aspect of the selectmen and the power of presenting the wording of the warrant to town meeting. And I spoke a month ago to ask if there was any sense that the scope of the project should be changed, whether all 200 should be under Conservation Commission, whether all 200 should be under CR. And I came here tonight to see if anybody else had thought any more about those specific issues. I also wanted to address the issues of whether it's time for another comprehensive land use study. The first one in Milford was, not the most recent one, but the previous one was 64, and then we had one in 93. And I'm not entirely sure that putting this 200 acres under Conservation Commission, and I'm especially unsure that putting it under CR before we have another comprehensive land use study, which I think is probably due in the near future, because when I read the 93 one, it was crystal clear that they had waited way too long from 64 to 93. The horse was out of the barn by that point. And I would have liked to have spoken whenever the public
sir.
discussion was earlier
My
tonight.
colleagues can attest to it. I said citizen participation, and there was none. No one said anything, and I looked around, no one raised their hand. So,
All right.
you know, whether it's too many people, too much noise and all that, but why don't you give us your comments now, and then we'll do the best we can, we'll go forward.
I'm not sure how much it matters at this point. The wording is going to go to the printer and be presented. The fact is, while town meeting is not a rubber stamp, things that are sponsored by the selectmen, for the most part, are very successful.
Sir, not all the time.
I said not all the time, but that's why I'm expressing a question about the leadership of this specific thing. This is a really heavy-handed approach to town land use issues that I think deserved a much more nuanced approach before the language was submitted to town meeting.
Sir, this
That's
is
all I
not-
wanna
I just
say.
want to say something, because I don't know if you, there's nothing underhanded about this. We talked about it. Matter of fact, I was prepared to talk about it at the last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, because my feelings were the same then, because of the information that I've obtained. We're all trying to do the right thing. We're trying to protect land. In my feeling, and I will say at the town meeting on the 21st, when is it? 19th of May, and I'll say it on the April 28th, when we discuss these in depth, and if we discuss it again on May 12th, I'll say the same thing. I just feel that for me, the best protection is going by the way of the trustees.
Can you be more specific about the parcels that you're talking about that you thought would never be built on, that became built on? Were those municipally owned properties or private properties?
They were both, sir.
The specifics matter a
I could talk to you
lot.
about- I could talk to you about
Well,
that.
I just want to say the specifics matter a lot, because that 200 acres is not actually currently under threat.
Right. Well, I'm
And
just telling you.
it's not probably under threat, not that I've got a
Okay.
crystal ball, but I don't believe it's actually under threat within the next 10 years, and I think there's time to do a comprehensive land use study.
And that's one of the things I had for an agenda item over the next coming months. There's a lot of things I plan on doing. What
It'll
I
be
was talking about, sir, was that I met, before we bought the Consigli property, a developer called me and was interested in building condos on that property. And he wanted to know what the process was, he wanted to know who the owner was and all that. And before we even got 15 minutes into the discussion, I said, I would not be in favor of just B. I would go to the planning board, zoning board, town meeting, if you were able to make out an agreement with the owner of the property. I think that would be the worst thing in the world, because of the sensitivity of where it is in the aquifer and Louisa Lake and all that. That's what I was referring to.
Right. I'm just making sure we're not confusing the difference between private property that was once a beautiful field and becomes developed, and publicly owned property, which has been sold in the past, but I don't see that land being currently under threat. And chances are that this Article 17 has a really good chance of passing. It may be modified in some capacity, but
I don't know, sir. That's why we have to have the debate. And-
Yeah, I wouldn't automatically assume that.
I didn't
Two-thirds
automatically
right?
assume it. I said it likely will.
Yeah, two-thirds majority, it's a tough
If you wanna
road.
If you want to come back on April 28th, you're free to do that, and we'll discuss it at length. We'll have people come in, we'll be having the town planner, we'll be having the town engineer, and we'll have a discussion, and then we have to vote on the articles. That'll be the formal time that we vote on the articles.
I thought we just committed to that.
That was to go to printing, sir, to go to printing. It has to go to the printer tomorrow to get everything ready. In the past, a lot of times, even when I've not felt comfortable about an article, I said, okay, let it go to printing, and then at the right time, we will vote on the articles.
So the wording is not locked up yet?
No, the wording will be,
Okay.
the articles will be, but it has to go to the printer, and we've done this many times. I know, like I said, during the past year and a half, I've probably, 2 or 3 articles felt that I was not in favor of it, but I said, okay, if you want to, send it forward to get it ready for debate, and the Finance Committee has to look at everything, and all the other boards, and then we will debate it, we will take a vote on it, so everybody knows. The moderator receives a vote of our board on all the articles, but we will be discussing this in depth on April 28th.
At the Selectmen's meeting.
Here, yes.
Great.
Okay, and I'm sorry that, you know, you didn't hear me say citizen participation, but I did say it. We had a lot of people in the room, so it might have been noisy, you maybe didn't hear it, or was, you know, whatever. But you've had your chance now, and I look forward to seeing you on April 28th, if you want to
All
come
right.
in. Okay?
Thanks.
All right, sir, thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, old business, anything, Brian?
No.
Bill?
No, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, new business. We have secondhand pool tables. I'll take the first group. This is a renewal of secondhand licenses, 2014, Baza Jewelry and Gifts. Gregory Bowser doing business as Pandora's Box, Central Street Resale. Mr. Nascimento Mendez doing business as Mendez Antiques, Nathan's Jewelers, TJ Collectibles Incorporated, This and That Thrift Shop. Is there a second?
I will second the motion, but on the vote, I need to abstain for Mr. Nascimento Mendez, DBA Mendez Antiques, TJ Collectibles, Inc., and This and That Thrift Shop.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, and then there would be 3 abstentions that Brian just mentioned. Bill, want to take the pool
Sure.
licenses?
Renewal of pool license for 2014 Fun Zone of Milford LLC, doing business as Pins, 110 South Main Street. Hoboken Citizens Club, 252 Central Street. Thai Tran, doing business as Lucky 9, 119 East Main Street. Go ahead. I guess we'll,
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, since there's only one more, I'll take it. Fun Zone of Milford LLC, doing business as Pins, 110 South Main Street. Is there a motion?
I'll move, yeah.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and that's unanimous. Okay, removal of a sign. This is from Scott Crisafulli. This is regarding a child who is, I believe, deaf, and the person has moved. So we will be taking down the sign at that location. Is
I'll
there a
move.
motion?
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. One of the nicest things that we go to the baseball parade. This is every year. This year it's going to be on April 27th, starting at 11:30 from the Stop and Shop parking lot, and all the kids march down to Rosenfield Park, and then there'll be a ceremony. So is there a
Motion.
motion? Motion by Brian,
Second.
second Bill. All in favor? Unanimous. Next is the American Legion Auxiliary. Jenny De La Rosa has been doing this for a long time. God bless her. She distributes poppies at local stores, and this will be for Stop and Shop and Shaw's on May 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion?
second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. And this wonderful family has made another donation to the accessible platform of Louisa Lake. They're providing $2,500 for the completion of railings, and this will be ready for the fishing derby that WMRC has on Patriots Day week. Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept the very generous gift.
Moved
Very
and
generous,
seconded.
thank you.
And Rick will send them a letter of appreciation.
Absolutely.
Brian, anything else on the new business?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Bill?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Just one item. Rick, if you can check on this.
Yep.
You remember a few months ago, there was an accident where a lady at the Fortune Boulevard intersection, I guess she went through the railing and ended up in the pond, right across from Hickey's.
Okay.
It was in the paper, it was on the news and all that. I don't believe that that fence has been repaired, so it's still in case someone else
Okay.
decides to go in there, see if we can find out who the owners are, and see if we can force them to make sure they put back the railing.
Sure.
So that'll have protection.
I will check on that, thank you.
Okay. And I was going back some old records. This goes back to 96, 94. This is on the IDC. I know, Bill, you've been trying to work with the IDC, changing the mission around, and they're working on different things. this is a marketing plan that we had, a brochure of Milford resources, land, town services. So, you know, a lot of times it's, don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have some information. Maybe they can look at that,
Yeah,
this
that'd be great.
information, then come up with that. If you could give that to Rick, please.
Thank you.
Cleaning out your office, huh? You're getting,
Yeah.
Mr. Valani,
Gonna be moving,
all of
yeah.
your papers.
Yeah. Okay, the chief has given us a police report. Any comments on that, Brian?
Not really, Mr. Chairman. It's the first quarter for 2014. I didn't find anything that I found particularly alarming. Obviously, the Royal Buddha incident that we handled previous this evening was on there. Other than that, I don't have any problems with the report.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm just happy to say one of the thinner quarterly reports, and
Yeah,
if not for that incident, would have been, had very little in it.
yeah. On the correspondence, we already have the memo regarding Chapter 90 monies that Attorney Valani talked about. The other item is that police chief talked about it. As far as the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit signs on Diller Street in the town of Milford, 50 feet west of Cedar Street, 25 feet east of Summer Street. And the speed signs indicating 30 miles per hour were posted a number of years ago. However, the town has not been able to locate a warrant from Mass DOT for these signs, so that's, I believe, what we talked about at one of your last meetings as chairman, Bill.
Yes.
Then I'm not sure about this, but we have something from town council talking about the insurance program that we've been talking about, switching from Harvard Pilgrim to Blue Cross Blue Shield. All the unions were contacted. The unions agreed, and it was a, very good job. It was done pretty readily. Instead of waiting till June, now this will be, the appropriate enrollment date is May 1st, and town council is giving credit to acting treasurer Kelly Capisi and the advisory committee for the working quickly and gaining support from the unions and all that. And by doing this, that we all talked about and did, the town will be saving about between $70,000 and $80,000 in the first year. So, we've talked about insurance, and I think the advisory committee and the consultant and Kelly worked very diligently, very hard. It's just the fact that the price keeps going up all the time, and I wish there was something that could be done about that, but I guess there isn't. Anything else on the correspondence, Brian?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Bill?
Yeah, just received a note. It was actually written to the Highway Department, Scott Christofouli, but I was CC'd on it. I want to bring it to the attention of the board that there are several residents looking to see if there was an opportunity to create a painted sidewalk for pedestrian crossing at where Congress Street and Robert Road intersect or connect. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board member. Scott's looking into it, and there'll be town planner looking into it as well. But just wanted to provide that.
I
You have a
do have a
copy?
copy.
Okay.
I hope
Okay,
to
good.
put that on for the April 28th agenda.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Bill.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we do have two items for executive session, one on litigation by town council, and the other one would be the town administrator employment contract fire chief. We will not be coming back into open session. Is there a motion for
I'll move.
executive session?
Yep.
Move and seconded?
Yes,
Roll call
seconded.
vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And good night, and thank you very much.